He lives in a big, noisy and crowded city with a busy rhythm of life. But he is interested in another world. A world with no fuss, where a person lives preserving the heritage of his ancestors and the precepts of nature. Konstantin Kuksin, an ethnographer, traveler, a current member of the Russian Geographical Society, as well as the founder and director of the Museum of Nomadic Culture in Moscow. Nomads of the Great Steppe are his favorite topic, and he can talk about it for hours. About the nomadic civilization that, like a patchwork quilt, covers our planet. We will talk about all of this on the sacred land of Ulytau. Welcome to Ulytau. Konstantin Kuksin in the new season of Dala project. The wheel of history does not turn in the air. The wheel of history rolls on the ground. Being a teacher of history and geography for many years, I noticed that these subjects are inseparable. Historical events take place somewhere, and there is no place on the inhabited continents of the Earth where people did not live, did not change the landscapes. Thus, geography and history always go together, always side by side. To help me understand the history of this beautiful land, I invited Mukhtar Bakituli, my colleague and a history teacher. Mukhtar, if we imagine turning back the time, where will we end up? How does the history of populating Ulytau begin? What is the earliest period?
С чего начинается история заселения Улытау? Самый ранний период?
Самый ранний период – это поздний палеолит. Позднепалеолитическое время, о котором свидетельствует...
The earliest period of habitation is the Late Paleolithic era. This is evidenced by various settlements, sites and workshops that were discovered during archaeological expeditions. In the 1960s, archaeologist Klapchuk located such Paleolithic sites as Oba-Lisai, Jamanai-Bat and Muzbel. Large-scale systematic expeditions began only in 2001. The retrieved material gave us a lot of information.
То есть экспедиции, которые давали нам информацию на основе подъемного материала и конкретной локализации всех палеолитических стоянок.
The history of Ulytau starts in the Stone Age. These are tools from a site from that era. These exhibits are stored in our museum and presented at an exhibition that shows how the humanity has evolved in this area. If you look at our exposition, you will see that at first people engaged in hunting and gathering. Our exhibits testify to this. Archaeologist Emma Usmanova discovered them during expeditions that were taking place from 2004 to 2010. Then she gave them to us. These are arrowheads that are one of the most ancient pieces of evidence from the Stone Age. They were found in the Oba-Lisai Gorge. The same artifacts were found near the Balazhezdi and Ulkenchezdi rivers. In 1992, Jetisu archaeological expedition found workshops in places where ancient people used to make stone tools, clearly intended for hunting and farming. The land of Ulytau gave birth to many great people who formed the elite of the nomadic community. Tell us more about this.
Более такое громкое, можно сказать.
The most well-known representation of Ulytau region in the world are the conquests of Oghuz Kagan. His father, Karakan, lived in Ortak and Kertak mountains, which are other names for Ulytau mountains.
Ulytau. Он родил сына Оghuz Kagana, который завоевал весь мир.
Mukhtar, you use terms like Kertak and Ortak. What do they mean?
Так вообще это тау. То есть тау и так это, можно сказать, тождественное. Поэтому ор древнейшее...
Tak is the ancient Turkic pronunciation of the word Tau, that is, mountain. Tak and Tau are synonyms. Or Rov are also synonymous, meaning an impregnable mountain. Later it started associating with the word horde. Plano Carpini writes in the 12th century, they call the headquarters of their kings the horde, which means the center. You understand, right? It means we can also talk about this area as the central part of the nomadic route, and in general as the habitat of both the nomadic society and the nobility of the steppe. As for Kertak, Ker means back, that is, the way back. The Kertak mountain, which stretches to Maytube village, served as the landmark for winter camps.
Вот эти горы Кертак, которые продолжаются до Майтубе, они являются как бы ориентиром для маршрута назад, потому что все источники говорят о зимних стойбищах, именно о каракумах и басуках. Нам источники говорят о том, что
According to the sources, it was Ortak and Kertak mountains that became the center of the formation of the culture of the so-called Golden Man. When a culture glorifies holy people, noble people, who, as Rashid al-Din writes, in life dressed in gold, covered their horses in gold, and were buried in gold, naturally people would make embroidered dolls, make idols, create balbal stone statues. If we talk about Genghis Khan is number 2 compared to Oghuz Kagan.
И когда мы говорим сегодня о Чингисхане, Чингисхан номер 2 по сравнению с Оghuz Kagan. Рашид один в своем Жамигат ат-Таварихе пишет,
Rashid al-Din in his Jami al-Tawarik writes about Genghis Khan as a liberator. He writes that he liberated Bukhara, liberated Samarkand, liberated the Central Asian cities. Many did not understand why he interpreted the history in this way. This was a conquest. This was an empire. In fact, Genghis Khan was liberating the Turkic world according to his plan. The world that was created in the 2nd century BC by Oghuz Kagan. Yakov Goverdovsky in 1803 wrote the overview of the Kyrgyz Kaysak steppe. Here he, referring to Abul Ghazi, says that the campaigns of Oghuz Kagan occurred after the conquests of Alexander the Great. Alkay Margulan, based on an analysis of all these sources, attributes the time of the campaigns to the period after the conquest of Modu Chanyu.
Это время завоевания Оghuz Kagana после завоевания Моды.
2nd century BC is the reign of Modu of the Xiangnu peoples, right?
Да, Моды. Оghuz Kagan, он является сыном Карахана, и где он мог жить? Соответственно...
Oghuz Kagan, the son of Karakan, where could he live? We can only talk about Ortak and Kertak, which are now called Ulytau and Kishitau. Therefore, Oghuz Kagan's conquest began here, that is, from the formation of a powerful nomadic state.
Империи, формирование такой мощной кочевой державы. А после Оghuz Kagana идет священный Ергеникон, 3-4 века, когда произошла двухвековая засуха.
After Oghuz Kagan comes the sacred Ergenekon. During 3rd, 4th centuries AD, there was a 2-century drought when people murdered each other in the struggle for pastures. The Mongol people led by Nukus Khan and Kian Khan escaped to the gorge called Ergenekon. It sounds like Yerkin Khan in Kazakh, which means stay freely. That is, it was such a favorable or free nomadic camp.
Или вольготное кочевье. Вот эти имена, они и вот оставлены в источниках. Ну и Бортешина,
These names are mentioned in the sources, including a legend of an ancestor of Genghis Khan who was featured in the secret history of the Mongols, brought his people out of Ergenekon, drove out the Tatars off the ancestral lands, and returned the pastures to his people. What pastures are we talking about? These were the pastures near Ortak and Kertak in the land of Mongols, or as Rashid al-Din called it, Mogulistan. That is, not the Mongol Empire, which was later formed by the Great Mongols, the descendants of Ogedei and Monke Khans, but the Mogulistan in the Kazakh steppes.
Могулистан. То есть не тот Моголистан, который позже был сформирован на основе великих моголов, да, потомков Угедея, Мунке, да, потому что они были великими моголами. То есть это Семиречье и Восточный Туркестан. А Могулстаном он называет именно Казахскую степь.
One of the most influential foundations for the formation of the future Kazakh Khanate was the Ulus of Joshi.
Это уже Улус Джучи.
Мына жерде сіздердің көріп тұрғаныңыздай архитектура қор.
Here are samples of bricks that were found near the necropolises of Joshi Khan, Timur Kutluk, Talmasata, Keletam, and Bolganana.
Талмасатаның, Келінтамның, басқа да жаңағы Болғананың кірпіштерін көбірек көрулеріңізге болады.
As you can see, the bricks are different from each other because, for example, Joshi Khan was endowed with a special status.
Бір-біріне ұқсамайтын кірпіштерді көрулеріңізге болады. Енді мына жерге келетін болсақ, бұл жерде жаңағы Болғанана қызының.
Let's move here and you will see the bricks from the mausoleum of his daughter Bolganana. And although they slightly differ in color, they're a little more reddish. They are still similar. Some bricks have an Arabic inscription.
Кейбір кірпіштерде араб тілінде жазулармен көрсетілген кірпіштерді де көруге болады. Мына жерде көбіне глазурлы кірпіштерді көруге болады.
And here you can see samples of azure tiles. If we begin to look closely at the original tiles from Joshi Khan's mausoleum, we will see an original technique, the secret of which is still unknown.
Анықтай алмайды. Өте керемет құнды дүние деп айтуға болады. Ал енді осы кірпіштің кейінгі мынау реставрациямен кейінгі жасаған түрін.
This is an incredibly valuable asset. It is incomparable to those tiles that were used later for the restoration of the mausoleum. But if we do not restore this wonderful monument every 5 to 10 years, we will not be able to preserve it for the future generations.
Оны біз ұрпақтарымызға кейінгі сақтай алмаймыз.
Когда Улус Джучи стал Улук-Улусом.
When the Ulus of Joshi became the Ulug-Ulus, that is, the Great State, the term Ulytau came into usage. Kofiz Tanish Bukhari in 1583 mentions the campaign of the Uzbek Khan Abdullah II against Baba Sultan on the lands of Ulytau. There he used the term Ulytau.
То есть это Ултауский поход. То есть там уже используется термин Улуктак. Горы стали великими, потому что здесь жили.
The mountains became great because great rulers lived here. The great Ulus watched over and kept order throughout the entire Silk Road, from China to Europe.
Шелкового пути от Китая до Европы.
It was the nomads who ensured the functioning of the Silk Road. No one dared to attack the merchants. Whoever attacks the caravan, according to the Yasa, the code of law of Genghis Khan, would be torn into 4 parts. They would be tied by 4 limbs to 4 horses, which would run to 4 different sides. As Rashid al-Din wrote, a lonely virgin girl with a bag of gold could travel through the entire country of Tartaria and nothing would happen to her. Also, the fact that the Mongols revived the Silk Road and put things in order forced the Europeans to look for sea routes, which led to the discovery of America and other great geographical events. Again, history and geography are very closely linked.
Улуг-Улус или основана вот империя Чингисхана основанная.
Ulug-Ulus is the empire of Genghis Khan, based on an authoritarian management style, that is, a pyramidal hierarchical management. As Mikhail Veler, a famous Russian historian, put it, a system built on the principle, I'm the boss, you are the fool. You can believe in whatever you want, be it the Islamic religion, be it Buddhism, be it Christianity. Just pay the taxes and send people for the army. What you believe in is your business. That same freedom of conscience which had been the law in the Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire was ahead of its time in many ways. We started talking early in the morning and now the sun is high up in the sky. It moves on like everything in this world, in this universe does. It rotates like the wheel of time, the wheel of history. And it's time for us to follow its lead. Mukhtar, and if we look not at the history of politics and wars, but at the history of culture, in your opinion, on which three pillars does the culture of this region, the culture of Ulytau, stand? This is, first of all, nomadism. This is metallurgy, Zhezkazgan and neighboring villages are lands rich in copper. When did people start developing it? Is the formation of copper smelting an important period for this region?
Если весь мир перешел на медь во время энеолита, то Зhezkazganский мылоходок, тот же самый, да, например.
If the whole world switched to copper during the Neolithic era, then Zhezkazgan's Malikudik mine was functioning during the late Neolithic, that is, the New Stone Age. There was a whole chain of metallurgical sites. Malikudik, Sorkudik, Ainakol. Taldisai also processed and smelted Zhezkazgan copper.
Эмира Тимура, он говорит об Олуг-Бакарлык. То есть это Олуг, это великое, Бакарлык, это плавильня. Ну и в X веке Аль-Бируни, Идриси, они пишут о том, что шашские торговцы, купцы...
In the 15th century, when he described the campaign of Timur, mentioned Ulyk-Bakarlik. Ulyk here is great, and Bakarlik is smelter. In the 10th century, Al-Biruni and Al-Idrisi wrote that Shash merchants came to Ulyk-Bakarlik and bought a large number of camels, gold, silver and copper, and sold them in different countries. Smelters in Zhezkazgan could also separate gold from silver. For example, Karsakpai copper smelter learned how to do gold parting only in 1953. You see, they've been working on it for 30 years. While people back in the Neolithic era knew various methods of gold parting that are still a mystery to us. And thirdly, history knows well of the nomadic elite that spread across vast territories of Eurasia. This is not only Kazakhstan and Mongolia, but also China, Persia and even Europe.
На практически огромные просторы Евразии. Это не только Казахстан и Монголия, но и Китай, Персия, вплоть до Европы.
These are worthy pillars of Ulytau's foundation. The region is rightfully called not only the geographical, but also the sacred center of Kazakhstan. Mukhtar, tell me how the culture of nomadism took shape here in Ulytau. How did it all start?
Здесь очень много на основе археологии мы имеем свидетельства очагов земледелия, но уже с изменением климата в сторону аридизации, то есть засушливости.
Archaeological evidence shows a lot of centers of agriculture in the region. However, climate aridification, that is, as the steppe was getting drier, animal husbandry became the predominant type of farming. As a result, people needed to adapt and to increase pastoral lands. And so, cattle breeders followed the routes of wild animals. Saigars, goited gazelles, onagas knew paths to water sources and where to cross them. Thus, nomadism ousted wild animals from their habitats. By the Bronze Age, the number of pastoral nomadic tribes was significantly higher compared to hunting ones.
Над охотничьим. Да, ну, охотничество уже стало более такое аристократическое.
Our region is the record holder, one might say, for the annual nomadic cycle. More than 1,000 kilometers. This is where people traveled the longest. The nomadic system provided comfortable conditions for the livestock. In winter, they enjoyed warm southern climate and in summer migrated to cool regions. This created the conditions for weight gain. The tribes that lived only in the northern regions had to spend winters in gorges or hollows. Their livestock had to get food from under the snow and thus was losing weight. That is why nomadism was of great importance.
Это создавало условия для набора веса.
Historians describe migration paths of many Kazakh clans as stretching tens of thousands of kilometers. They inevitably returned to the places where their ancestors lived, where they were buried. Still, we can see a lot of such family graveyards across the steppe. They serve as a very important source of understanding nomadic communications.
Плюс есть очень хороший источник, который мы активно используем, это тамги. Все знают, что тамги это прежде всего.
Another very good source of information that we actively use are tamgas. Everyone knows that tamga is an abstract label that serves as a sign of a clan affiliation. Different Kazakh clans still use tamgas. This practice began long ago in the era of early nomads. For us, this is very important because when we find these tamgas on the rocks, we can say that this ethnic group was in this particular place and another ethnic group was in another place. People moved because rocks can't move. Only the carriers of these tamgas who consider this their ancestral sign can move. This was also a sort of a way to determine their territories.
Своего рода был еще и способ определить свои территории. Мы знаем из китайских хроник, что
We know from Chinese chronicles that horses were branded with tamgas, which, by the way, were constantly supplied to China from here. The Chinese have always meticulously recorded all of this for thousands of years, which tamgas on horsebacks meant what. This provides us with invaluable information that helps in understanding the movements of those early Kazakh clans, as well as how the ancient people communicated.
Ранних казахских родов и как передвигались, как коммуницировали древние люди.
Many believe that the nomads were engaged in racketeering. They simply robbed the unfortunate farmers and merchants. This is fundamentally wrong. Nomads were, rather, the organizers, the managers of this most complicated process. A nomadic society, a pastoral society, is a constant movement across the steppe. And the elite controlled their customs posts on the banks of the rivers. The richer the farmer, merchant, or craftsman, the more tribute the nomad will receive. And for nomads, the main line of expenses was the army.
То, что вы рассказываете про Ulytau, мне напоминает
What you are telling about Ulytau reminds me of Central Mongolia, which is also the central formation of nomadic empires. This brings together the two centers of nomadic civilization because there have always been two of them, the eastern one in Mongolia and the western one, which was probably located here in the vicinity of Ulytau, with its rich and beautiful land. Although the climate slightly differs. Thunderstorms are a common occurrence in Mongolia, while here there isn't a cloud in the sky, but a lot of snow falls in winter.
история Ulytau.
The history of Ulytau is an amazing story full of various events. It becomes even more special when you step on these stones, inhale the aroma of wormwood, and realize that the Mongols and the Oguzes, and even the people of the Stone Age who lived on this beautiful land, experienced the same.
Прекрасной земле.